Warning, I say a lot of bad words. If you're under 13, you probably shouldn't be watching this.
We need backup!
The Marvel Cinematic Universe is probably the biggest pop culture phenomenon in recent memory. For about a decade, the MCU has pretty much dominated the international box office, with nearly every film pulling in close to $1 billion at least, and Avengers Endgame in particular taking Avatar's spot as the highest grossing film of all time, probably to James Cameron's eternal sadness. Pretty much the only reason it slowed down at all is because the world literally went to hell last year. Given Marvel's monumental success at the box office, it's kinda weird that aside from Spider-Man and Marvel vs. Capcom and a couple other things, there hasn't really been that many big-budget AAA attempts to cash in on the brand's popularity. There was that one Avengers game from last year, but oh, well, let's see how badly this went. I had to take out my copy of Miles Morales to install this on my PS4. I'm pretty sure that's a capital offense in some other countries. This game opens up with Kamala Khan, aka Miss Marvel, whom I don't know a whole lot about because I'm too lazy to read comic books or do research. Accompanied by her father, who could really use some facial hair advice, she's on a flight to attend a convention and enter a fanfiction competition. We are definitely off to a start.
Why call it the Golden Gate Bridge if it's not golden?
Admittedly, this opening sequence is actually pretty cute. I don't know, it's just fun watching Kamala get excited and geek out over the convention stuff. Credit where it's due, Kamala is a really endearing protagonist. I know there's probably some people who will complain about her being a girl or her ethnicity or something, and those people are fucking stupid. Once all the Avengers are introduced for the first time, we get a weirdly edited scene where there's apparently shit going down at the Golden Gate Bridge. Jesus, I just feel bad for that poor bridge. Everybody's always destroying it. This whole sequence is the tutorial that introduces the basic gameplay mechanics, and it's fine, it gets the job done. Apparently, this was all of the work of Taskmaster, who looks infinitely lamer here than he did in Insomniac's Spider-Man. And then Cap dies. Oh no, I totally believe that one of the main characters whom they designed an entire gameplay style for and put front and center on the game's crappy box art is actually dead. Oh no, what will the Avengers do? The world is doomed. About 5 years later, I think, the Avengers just split up after a lot of people lost their lives and they overall just embarrassed themselves. This is literally the opening to the first live-action Scooby-Doo movie. A few years into the future, martial law has basically been enacted, and any person with superpowers is both a societal outcast and a wanted criminal. The world kinda sucks, but that's okay because Kamala's an expert hacker.
What?
So, what would happen if she got the password correct but couldn't get past 2FA?
Oh my god, I'm in!
The billionaire genius is a total idiot about cybersecurity. So far, that's the most realistic thing about this game.
No. Ah, wrecked!
Because Kamala didn't use a VPN when downloading security footage of the incident, she attracts the attention of AIM and has to bolt. You know, this entire situation could have been avoided had Kamala used today's sponsor, NordVPN. That didn't last long.
I know I don't quite compare to my holographic counterpart, but it's a nice trick for the shareholders.
Okay, this guy looks like he wants to debate me about politics.
What happens when you lose control again? What happens when you hurt someone that you love?
Are you Ben Shapiro? Ultimately, Kamala does get away and finds the ruins of the helicarrier, along with some unexpected company. The rest of the plot is her and Bruce getting all the Avengers back together to reunite and defeat the bad guy. The story is, to be perfectly blunt, not good. It has a few good things going for it, but as a whole, it falls flat at every turn. Like I said, I do actually like Kamala as a protagonist, and she's probably the most defined and fleshed out character in this game. Her geeky mannerisms are admittedly pretty cute, and I do think she has a compelling arc and conflict involving her efforts to help reunite the Avengers and trying to live up to what she thinks their expectations are. That and the father-daughter dynamic between her and the Avengers, specifically Bruce Banner and Tony Stark, is really sweet. Oddly enough, it's stronger between Kamala and those two than it is between Kamala and her actual dad. That's all the good I can say though, everything else is poopy and terrible. The first big issue is that the entire crux of the main central conflict is that Captain America supposedly died in the explosion at the beginning of the game. It's the main thing that drove the Avengers apart on that day, and it's constantly brought up. The game bringing this up over and over again gets so damn annoying because it's painfully obvious that Cap didn't die, because why would anyone spend the time and resources to make him a playable character if he was going to die in the opening mission? Oh, looky here, he's still alive. Only absolutely everybody saw that coming. This game has such a weirdly roundabout way of explaining the bad guys' plan that it's pretty difficult to tell what their goal even is. The continuity of this game's universe is kinda similar to Insomniac's Spider-Man because it takes place long after the Avengers became heroes, came together, and became a household name. The main difference is that Spider-Man did this well, while Marvel's Avengers tripped down a long flight of stairs and got paralyzed. This game does the bare minimum with the main cast. The characters aren't explored properly, and I barely know anything about them in this universe, so I feel no attachment to them and I don't care at all. Spider-Man didn't have this problem because it took the time to establish Spider-Man, the state of the world, and his relationships. In Avengers, we get very little of anything like that. All I know at the start is that the Avengers were big celebrities, and after that, the world went to shit. Kamala is the one who gets the most development, and it causes the Avengers to feel like side characters in their own fucking game. This is genuinely one of the most dry and dull adaptations I've ever seen of a Marvel property. These characters are so watered down to the point where they feel like generic quippy video game protagonists without any depth or defining traits. Most of the Avengers feel like Nathan Drake without any of the things that make Nathan Drake an interesting character. The game tries to pull off some of that comedic banter from the MCU films, but it lacks the wit that makes it work in the movies. I'm not gonna blame the voice actors because they do a fine job given the material. This game has Troy Baker and Nolan North in the main cast. If any voice actors have the charisma to pull off Marvel banter, it's absolutely those two. Unfortunately, most attempts at comedy constantly fall flat because the writing around them is just dull. Overall, the story ends up being just okay at the best of times, and completely uninteresting at the worst of times. Whenever it has an idea that might potentially be interesting, such as the subplot with the Inhumans uprising, it's not given enough time in the oven to actually have any weight to it. Now, this game has a bad story, but is the actual game itself bad? Yes. As soon as the very first combat sequence, I immediately had the intuition that the core gameplay of Marvel's Avengers was going to get old really fast and not be enough to carry the rest of the game. I have never been more disappointed with myself for being right about something. Every character has a light attack, strong attack, ranged attack, and a couple special moves. Credit where it's due, all the characters at least feel distinct and play differently from each other. That's all the credit this piece of shit's getting. This is one of the most boring games I've ever played. The combat in this game is aggressively bare bones. It feels like the stock template of every beat-em-up ever made, just with a Marvel paint job. There is so little to the actual combat aside from the basics and a few unlockable attacks. The problem isn't that the combat is simple, there's so many other games with simple combat that I love. The problem is that the game doesn't do anything interesting, and it feels like ass and gravy. All you do is fight the same small pool of generic robot and aim soldier enemy types. This is the bulk of Avengers content. Pick some location, navigate a boring, empty, poorly designed environment, and beat up waves and waves of the same 5 enemy types. This game is so goddamn repetitive. There's just nothing else to it other than beating up the same boring, tired enemies with the same boring, tired combat in the same boring, tired environments. I was so disinterested and bored that I was considering getting drunk to make this at least somewhat somewhat interesting. Unfortunately, I'm a total pansy, so I ended up taking regular sober boredom over drunk belligerent boredom. If the game actually felt good to play, then I feel like this problem would be slightly mitigated. However, the game just feels wrong. It's slow, it's clunky, it's unintuitive. This game feels like a chore to get through. Combat has zero impact or weight, so it isn't even satisfying to beat up any of the enemies. Avengers found a way to make the Hulk, the fucking Hulk, feel weak. Thor also feels empty to play as does Black Widow and Kamala. The only character I had fun with was Iron Man, and that's because the mechanics for him feel the most fleshed out, and he does get a couple of segments that aren't just terrible combat with repetitive waves of enemies, or running around a boring empty level. The parts where you get to fly around in the Iron Man suit and shoot stuff are actually pretty cool, but moments like that are far and very few between. This game doesn't make me feel like Captain America, it doesn't make me feel like Thor, it doesn't make me feel like the Hulk, it only kinda makes me feel like Iron Man, and it certainly doesn't make me feel like Batman, so fuck this game. Avengers is very clearly trying to be Marvel's take on grindy loot-based games like Destiny and Borderlands, but it's significantly worse than both of them, as well as several other titles trying to cash in on the live service bandwagon that stuck around the AAA gaming sphere like an ugly leech. The loot in this game is really bad. One of the biggest draws of this style of game is getting cool weapons and gear to customize the look and playstyle of your character. A huge part of that is lost by the fact that none of the shit you pick up even shows up when you put it on your character. They're literally just invisible stat buffs, and they don't even do that much notable, so what's the point of any of them? I already have to navigate these confusing, unintuitive menus for a billion other things. I don't really feel like using them to equip all this useless junk. The whole time you're going to a small pool of locations to collect a thing, protect a thing, or destroy a thing, and I can't fucking stand it. There's barely any actual Marvel villains to fight in this game either. Not counting Taskmaster at the beginning, you have Abomination who shows up for one boss fight and never comes back, Monica, and MODOK. Other than that, more generic robots and soldiers instead of actual recognizable villains from the Marvel universe. The fucking LEGO games did this better. Scratch that, the LEGO games did literally everything better than this game. Honestly, the most fun I had was jumping around like an idiot. That's the best part of this game. Okay, no. The actual best part of the game are the QuickTime events because they're so bad, they're brilliant. If you don't push the button for the QTE in time, the game literally freezes until you push the button. This is not edited, this is actually in the game. It is literally impossible to fail the QTEs in Marvel's Avengers. We are on a whole new plane of existence, holy fuck. The most fun I had was intentionally not doing the QTEs on time to see which ones freeze the game and which ones actually have a fail state. Playing Avengers, all I can think of are unflattering comparisons between it and Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric, as they're new adaptations of a popular brand with awful combat and 4-player co-op in case you want to make your friends and family suffer along with you. Those comparisons aren't exactly helped by the fact that Marvel's Avengers is a technical mess. It pretty consistently runs like crap throughout the entire game. I played it on the base PS4, so I'm not expecting top-of-the-line performance or anything, but god, this is just not acceptable for anything. The frame rate is so bad, especially in later parts of the game, that at some points it was barely playable on my end. Graphically, the game actually looks pretty good, even if some parts look distractingly desaturated and the characters look weird and uncanny. But this game has a big problem with the screen easily and often becoming a cluttered mess where it's hard to see things, especially in combat. It's difficult to focus with this big-ass HUD display and 50 different explosions going off at once. Also, I cannot for the life of me take the final design of MODOK seriously. He looks like Mr. Electric from Shark Boy and Lava Girl.
Charge!
The sound design is shockingly poor. It sounds so weak, and I feel like that plays a huge part in why the combat feels so unsatisfying. Thor's hammer sounds like a rubber kickball smacking you in the face, and it gives me flashbacks to grade school. I'd tell you how the main story ends, but the game crashed on me at the final boss. I took that as the universe telling me that it's time to stop playing. Even my PS4 has had enough. Marvel's Avengers is really bad and I don't like it. It's not the worst game ever made, but I was miserable the whole time I was playing. I know there's more content like the campaign with Kate Bishop and the multiplayer stuff, but I didn't have the motivation to finish the base game. Why would I want to play anything else from this game? It's boring, repetitive, and broken gameplay-wise, and the story sure as hell wasn't compelling enough for me to finish this thing. Given that it lost 96% of its players in the span of 2 months, and caused Square to lose tens of millions of dollars, I'm pretty comfortable calling this game a failure. Also, I'm probably the only brand new player this game has gotten in months. I'm not sticking around. There's no actual reason to play this game given that there's better loot-based games out there, and better Marvel games that you could play instead, like the PS4 Spider-Man games and literally any of the LEGO Marvel titles. I can't really say I'm disappointed or surprised because the E3 reveal didn't impress me at all, and I heard basically nothing good about the beta. I kinda expected the game to be like this. I know there's supposedly a plan for future content with this game, but there's gonna need to be a major No Man's Sky or Final Fantasy XIV level overhaul before I'd even think about coming back to this. It might be good in the future, but I didn't spend all this time talking about what the game might end up becoming. I spent it talking about the game in the current state I played it in. And yeah, as the game currently stands, it did nothing for me other than take away precious hours of my life and money that I could have used for, I don't know, pizza. Or bacon. Or illegal narcotics. So yeah, fuck this game, play Miles Morales instead, and thank you for watching.